Thank you, Neeline, for this very useful introduction. And yes, we are inviting you not only to use the opportunity to ask a GST project for the support for registration in PAD or something else, but if you have any additional doubts, questions, and you need consultations, you are invited to contact us on the help desk email that I have shared yesterday, but it is also at the very end of this presentation. So certainly use this opportunity to have either individual sessions or some group sessions, depending on your needs. Okay, so let us continue with the presentation. Okay, so today, as you have been informed, we will cover the preparation of the concept note regarding the format, the template. What are some tips for preparation of good concept note? And the second session is dedicated to assessment of your concept note. What basically is assessed from the side of the evaluation committee or supported by assessors when it comes to evaluation of your concept note. With regards to some technical details, it is really important to stress that you need to follow the template that you download from that link that we went yesterday, where the guidelines are published as well. So you need to follow this template very, very carefully. So you need to follow all the instructions, the exact instructions, such as you need to use A4 size with 2 centimeter margins. You should use Arial 10 font characters and single line spacing. So it seems like very detailed instructions, but yes, you need to follow them. This is because the maximum number of pages of the concept note is 5. So the total number of pages is 5. And in order for everyone to have, let's say, equal rights to present their project on 5 pages, that's why there are so detailed instructions with regards to size and font. So everyone are using the same tools. So you need to include all the relevant information only on 5 pages. It seems like easy because it's only 5 pages, but on the other hand, I think it's not so easy to present in brief what you will present later on if you will have the chance, if you will be invited to submit the full application, which can have 30 or even more pages, where there are not such limited space and restrictions. So you need to sum up your project which you are proposing. Of course, there are some sections that you need to follow and respect, but with regards to some general recommendations, you should ensure coherence. So each time when you change an information that you have put, for example, in the summary table or elsewhere, you need to adjust it. You need to read it once again, or give to colleague to read it once again to check that you have been using same terms throughout the text, that you have made coherent information in the sense that you haven't used different language or different information, you know, because it can be confusing. So each time when you are deciding to change something, you need to cross-check in all other parts of the concept note to adjust it there as well. You can use quotes from some relevant documents or articles. You can use tables. You can introduce tables or illustrations. if this helps to visualize your intentions. So you can support your claims, and it is allowed to add what you deem necessary to make a clearer picture on your intention. So you should provide full information on the project, because the evaluation is based on solely and only on the information which is provided in the concept note. So you have already been informed, and it is not even allowed in prospect to upload any other additional documents, such as reports or background documents to support your application. Only the concept note will be evaluated. Okay, so in this summary table, that is the first part of the concept note template, you should present in brief your result chain. We talked yesterday about result chain and result-based management. It is basically what you will present later on in the logical framework matrix. So you should present the impact, outcomes, outputs, and activities. You should also present your target groups and final beneficiaries. You should quantify them and integrate targets in results. You should also refer to the guidelines for understanding the context of your result chain and target groups and final beneficiaries. So I would advise you, to put focus on this summary table, maybe at the very end, when you already have the concept note developed, because you need certainly to make a summary of what you will explain in more details later on. But take into account that for an evaluator, this is the first starting point of your application, this summary table. So you should put a lot of efforts there to present everything that you plan, what are your intentions, and to be clear, logical, and precise. So if you want to impress, do it in this summary table first. This is the first impression, sometimes it is quite important. Okay, so then we have the first section after the summary, which is related to description of the action. It should be placed on maximum 2 pages. And on these 2 pages, you should give the background to the preparation of the action, in particular on the sector or territory or regional context, including key challenges. You should also present key issues and if there are any specific analysis or study that is carried out to inform the design, you mention this and you use quotes and references. So you should refer also, as we talked yesterday, to European Commission reports in your respective sector, and you should address these initiatives which are currently implementing or were implemented, and you should certainly try to connect your action and to basically to explain that it is not an overlap of some maybe similar activities, but it is a you're building some previous initiatives with your own project now. So try to incorporate it here. You should briefly outline the intervention logic, indicating the expected outcomes, outputs, and impact, as well as underline the main risk and assumptions toward the achievement of your outcomes and outputs. So you should briefly explain the intervention logic envisaged later on in the logical framework matrix. And then you should list again your planned outputs and outcomes and impact and explain them. So first in brief, and then to give more details up to these 2 pages that you have for the description of your action. As I mentioned, all the information should be in full alignment with the summary table. So if you are not aligned, then the evaluator or assessor could be confused because they don't know which information is relevant for your action. And that is why it is strongly suggested not to have such incoherence, interference, where inconsistencies in the text could lead to some misunderstanding. And certainly will give you less points if you have some inconsistencies which are not clear. Okay, you can prepare a table. You should mention certainly risk and assumptions which are underlying the achievement of your results. You should only briefly outline the activities proposed, including description of a linkage and relationship between activity clusters. So you should not go into details. You don't have space. You will do it in the full application phase, but you should now outline the activities which you are proposing. Then you should describe the key stakeholder groups. You should also describe their attitudes towards the action and if you have held any consultations with them. So probably you remember from yesterday that it is crucial to do a stakeholder analysis. So these are the individuals, groups to which positively or negatively you can influence on them by your proposed action, or they can influence on your action. And it is good to have even the consultations with identified stakeholder groups. And if you had such consultations, you should certainly include this information and what were the results of these consultations and how you incorporate it in your action that you're proposing. And then you should explain how your action will mainstream relevant cross-cutting issues, which is the promotion of human rights, gender equality, democracy, good governance, support to youth, children's rights and endangered people, environmental sustainability, combating AIDS. And it is better not to mention that the action will environmentally be friendly and not to explain how this will be ensured. So better to explain not only for the environmentally issues, but also for the other cross-cutting issues. You should not try to refer to all of them or many of them. Just try to focus and be realistic. To which cross-cutting issues stated here your action could contribute and mainstream. So do not disperse. Try to better to focus, but to explain it how, not just to state it as a statement. We will take into account the relevant cross-cutting issues. No, you cannot stop there. You should explain it. How? Then you should outline the broad time frame of your action. And you should describe if you have taken any specific factor into account. Okay, after the description of the action, the next section in the concept note is relevance of the action. So relevance of your action to the call's priorities, topics, themes, which are identified in the guidelines for applicants and which we have passed yesterday in the morning session. You are here limited to 3 pages. So description of the action is limited to 2 pages, and the relevance of the action is limited to 3 pages. For the relevance of the action, there are 4 main subtitles. So as I said, first of all, you need to prove that your action that you're proposing is relevant to the objectives and themes and specific priorities of the call, of the specific lot to which you are applying. Relevance to the particular needs and constraints of the target country or region and the relevant sectors. So you should include synergy with other development initiatives and avoidance of duplication. So you should show, as I mentioned earlier, that you are not duplicating or overlapping with some other activities in the relevant sector or country or region. And you should describe and define the target groups and final beneficiaries, their needs and constraints, and state how your action will address these needs. You should here focus and try to address some added value elements, which we have shown yesterday in the slide. But certainly they are defined in the guidelines for applicants as well. So here also what I said earlier, you should not disperse, try to focus on the really relevant value-added elements, maybe even on one of them. You don't have to address as many as possible added value elements. That doesn't necessarily mean that you will get the maximum score here. Later on, I will show you the scoring table, which is also from the guidelines for applicants, but I will show you, we will go through the scoring table that is fulfilled, that needs to be fulfilled by the evaluators or assessors who are supporting the evaluators. Okay, for the relevance of the action, that first section that we subtitle that we mentioned, so you need to describe the relevance of the action to the objectives and priorities of the call. You should make reference to call for proposal overall and specific objectives. So overall objective is the same for all the lots, but specific objectives are different for each lot. You should also explain here how your project activities can contribute, not just to mention, to state that you are contributing, but you should explain briefly how. And these specific priorities are also scored. This contribution to priorities is also scored. So take into account and try to describe it meaningful, to be meaningful. Also, what I would advise you here, if you are preparing maybe a concept note for different lots, if you plan to apply on different lots, please do not use the copy-paste option. Just try to be different and unique and to specify and address the priorities of each lot, not in general to have the same this relevance of the action description. Okay, you should also describe your relevance of the action to any other specific requirements from the guidelines for applicants. And you should describe which of the expected results will be addressed. Here, we don't have expected results defined in the guidelines for applicants. We have priorities and specific objectives. So you have more space here to address and to refer to priorities of each lot to which you are applying. Okay, this is the second subsection. So it is the relevance to the particular needs and constraints of the target country, region, or relevant sector. You should include and state clearly the specific pre-project situation in the target country. So state of play at the time when you are preparing your concept note proposal. So you need to be informed. You need to show that you're informed what is happening in your target country or region or sector in which you are acting and proposing your project. You should also include quantified data analysis if it is possible, if it is relevant. Then you should provide a detailed analysis of the problems to be addressed by the action and how they are interrelated at all levels. So focus on the problems. You need to show that you're aware of the problems which should be addressed by the action. And you should refer to any significant plans which are undertaken at national, regional, or local level, and they are relevant to the action. You should also describe how the action will relate to these plans. If you're proposing the action which is continuation of a previous action, you should clearly indicate how it is intended to build on the activities and the results of this previous action. You should refer to the main conclusions and recommendations if there were any evaluation carried out for this previous project. So if you have had an evaluation success of your project, previous project, you should certainly address these main conclusions and recommendations done by the evaluators of your previous action, and then you should connect it with your new proposed action and how you intend to build on the activities and the results of the previous action. Where your action is part of some larger program, you should clearly explain how it fits or how it is coordinated with that other program or any other planned project. So you need to show that you're aware what is happening in the field. So is it the target country, is it the region, is it your sector? You need to be aware if there is any previous or ongoing initiative, if there is a larger program to which you could contribute, and you should explain how your action fits and how you will coordinate your action with these other programs or projects. You should also explain the complementarity with other initiatives which are supported by the European Union and by other donors like member states and others. You should support your claims with studies, papers, plans, previous experience, but of course not as an additional documentation, but within this section of the concept note. Okay, then we have this third subsection where you need to describe and define your target groups and final beneficiaries. You need to address their needs and constraints and to state how your action will address these needs of target groups and final beneficiaries. If you want to make points and organize the text, you can use the table. It's not obligatory, but you need to present the following details. You should give a description of each of the target groups and final beneficiaries. You should quantify them if it is possible. And you should include the selection criteria. So how have you selected or identified your target groups and final beneficiaries? Identify the needs and constraints, including capacity constraints of each of the target groups and final beneficiaries. You should demonstrate the relevance of your proposal to the needs and constraints of the target groups and final beneficiaries, and explain participatory process where you ensure the participation of these target groups and final beneficiaries. this is basically it. And then we have these particular value-added elements, which are defined by the guidelines. So try to even satisfy this try to address any of these added value elements in order to not to be scored with 0 under this section you will see later on in the table. At the end of the concept note template, there is a checklist which is provided only for self-guidance purposes. You will not basically evaluate yourself, but you know, this checklist and the questions within the checklist can help you to make sure that you have followed the instructions of the concept note very carefully. And of course, you need to make sure that each question is answered, that you have used appropriate font and or other detailed technical instructions, and that you don't exceed the maximum number of pages. Because in that case, you might be administratively non-compliant, or a part of your text or part of your concept note will not be taken into consideration. At the end, you should delete the instructions provided in the concept note, and you should delete the checklist for self-guidance, which are both at the end of the template. We briefly tackled this issue about the possible changes that you can make from the concept note stage to full application stage. So in general, the elements that you have outlined in the concept note may not be modified in the full application. There are some exceptions, but it is quite certain that you need to have a quite clear picture of your proposed action, activities, outputs, and consequently results, because you will not be able to change that. You will be able to change the amount of the EU contribution, which can vary from the initial estimate that you prepare now and you ask now in the concept note by a maximum 20%. We explained yesterday how this 20% looks like, but for example, if you're asking 100,000 euros from the EU contribution side, then you can vary up to 20% plus minus. So it would be roughly 80,000. You cannot ask less than 80,000, and you cannot ask more than 120,000 euros. So take that into account. You are free to adopt the percentage of co-financing, but you need to respect the minimum and maximum amount of co-financing, which is from your side, the minimum 5% up to 40%. From the concept note phase to the full application phase, you can, as a lead applicant, add, remove, or replace one or more co-applicants or affiliated entities only in duly justified cases. So, since under Lot 3, it is not obligatory to have a co-applicant, which is on the other hand obligatory for Lot 1 and 2. But nevertheless, if you propose in the concept note stage co-applicant, or maybe even more co-applicants or affiliated entities, then you should basically apply with the same team in the full application stage. Why? Because your concept note was evaluated and scored on the basis of your partnership as well. So everything was taken into account, and in order to ensure the equal treatment, it is really not allowed you know, just to say, okay, we don't cooperate anymore with this co-applicant, so we want to remove it. So there are some possibilities to replace it in duly justified cases. But in this case, the new co-applicant or affiliated entity must be of a similar nature as the initial one. So it will be better to avoid this and to make sure that your partnership is formed in a solid and long term, not to have such changes. But on the other hand, if something goes wrong, I don't know, something happens, some force majeure maybe, in that sense, it is still possible, but you need to justify it clearly. You can adjust the duration of the action only in case of some unforeseen circumstances, which are outside the scope of the applicant. So the duration must remain within the limits imposed by the guidelines for applicant. Okay, so anyhow, if you're proposing, for example, that your action will last 24 months, it should stay like that in the full application as well. So as I recommended yesterday, better to envisage a bit more time than initially or exactly that you have calculated for all the activities to be implemented. Take a bit more time because later on, when you will go in more and more details about your project while preparing full application and all other relevant documents, such as budget and logical framework, maybe you come to the conclusion that you need more time. And you will be able to do this, but only if you can prove and justify it with some unforeseen circumstances that was out of your scope of influence. And they could, if you can explain and justify that without such adaptation of duration of your action, there is a risk of action not being carried out. But anyhow, you cannot go below 12 months and you cannot go about 36 months, which is the maximum duration under this call. You can replace your own contributions by other donors' contributions at any time. So this was one of the questions that even my colleague Alexandra has explained. So anytime you can replace your own contributions if you find another donor, but in that sense, it cannot be, again, EU or EDF, or, you know, you need to respect that you don't ask the money for co-financing from basically the same donors. If you will have these changes, any of these changes, it will have to be included in this Annex A2, which is full application, so in the second stage. If what is important here to stress, if your explanation or justification is not accepted by the evaluation committee, if it's not convincing enough, the proposal may be rejected on that sole basis. So take that into account. And here are some tips for the preparation of the good concept note. So it is follow, allow, learn, and have. We basically tackled all these issues, but just to have it on one slide. So you should, without exception, follow all the instructions in the document when filling in the concept note form. It is clear. You should allow sufficient time for preparation of your concept note, even though, as I said, it seems easy to write down your proposal of your project on 5 pages, but I think it's even harder than to write everything in details. So you need to sum up, you need to have a clear picture of what you're proposing, because you will not be in the position to change activities, outputs, results, you know. You will have to stick to the ones that you have proposed in the concept note stage. So allow yourself sufficient time for preparation, carefully read the guidelines for applicants, take into account also the templates that will be used in the second phase. So download the templates not only for the concept note, but also for the full application. Download the budget, the log frame matrix, and just to have a clearer picture of your project and what is expecting you in the next phase. So if you haven't started yet, I advise you to start immediately to work on your concept note. Don't leave it for the very end. You should learn also not about only about the EU procurement procedures, which is important for planning, but also what are the provisions of your future grant contracts. I already said that all your obligations, contractual obligations and rights are stipulated in Annex 2 of your future grant contracts. It is available in the zip file on the link where the guidelines are published as well. And there you can find really a lot of important information for the implementation, future implementation of your project. Not to say later on, I was not informed what is waiting for me. If I knew this or that, if I knew all these obligations that I will have, I would not apply, I would not sign this contract and things like that. So one thing is certainly to prepare a good concept note, and then to be invited to prepare a full application, then to prepare a good full application, and then to have all the necessary supporting documents to prove what you have stated in the full application during the eligibility check. It is not only that, to successfully pass through this, let's say, 1 year process of evaluation and selection of the best proposals, but after the contract signature, that is when the real work starts. So I would advise you even now to learn what is expected from you, to make sure that you will be able to accomplish this once you sign the contract. Okay, but with regards to EU procurement procedures, which are stipulated in Annex 4 of your future grant contract, also in that zip file available. But now you should just be aware that for the procurement process to be done in line with these provisions in Annex 4, you need time. You need time to prepare the tender documentation. You need time to give to the invited candidates, potential tenderers, to prepare their offers. And then you need time to evaluate their offers. And if you don't have good quality offers, or if something is administratively non-compliant in their offers, there is also a possibility, or even a need in such cases, that you have to cancel this procedure and you have to start with another procurement procedure. So it can take some time if you envisage to procure some services, external services, or if you decide to procure equipment, which is allowed under all 3 lots, but for lot number 3, it's up to 30% of your total budget of the contract. So take into account that you will not just start entering the stores, or I don't know, call your colleagues, will you work for me? I have this grant project. So no, it's a process, it's a procurement process that you need to respect and follow, and it takes time. And you should have an idea about your total budget amount. In order to do so, download the Excel table. It's Annex B. which gives you an overview of your expenditures, and then certainly you should do market research to see what you want to achieve. As I mentioned, if you have to buy airplane tickets, or if you need to rent a van, or if you will have to organize some conferences, seminars, how much catering cost in that area where you plan to have it, or if you want to procure some equipment, how much it costs. At this stage, currently, you will certainly need to perform another market analysis when the time comes, because it is subject to change, especially nowadays. But you need to have a clear idea and as precise as possible amount, even in this concept note stage. The other tips for good concept notes is certainly do not overpromise. Try to be as realistic as possible. I know that sometimes you feel eager, to accomplish as much as possible, but actually what you propose now, you will need to implement. You will need to perform. It will be your contractual obligation, part of your grant contract. So don't overpromise, don't overestimate your possibilities, your management capacities, technical capacities, your experience. Just try to be realistic as possible. If you have less capacities, then it will be better to go with a smaller amount of grant. If you don't have previous experience, especially with the EU grants, then it would be better, to not to envisage the maximum amount possible to be asked under this call. You should show that you have made research on the problem identification. You have to make clear reference to information sources and methodologies that you have used. And you should ensure that components that you're proposing naturally link together. As I mentioned, you need to ensure the coherence between the problems, activities, and expected results in this intervention logic, and try to be coherent throughout the whole document. Make detailed reference to your past experiences and how they are relevant to the proposed action. You should highlight your comparative advantages, and don't forget the relevant visibility requirements. You should carefully read the guidelines and all the annexes. They include the answers to many of your questions. That's what I already explained. You should consult the questions and answer document, which will be published on the Europaid website. So later on, we have some slides where there are deadlines until when you can ask official question to the contracting authority, and on which date they need to publish official answers on their website. You should make sure to use the templates which are provided and abide by the instructions. So you should follow clearly all the instructions. You should, if you have a question or need for help desk support, as we already advised for you, you should send your question, and you should contact the help desk as soon as possible in order for us to timely plan the potential sessions with either in groups or with individual sessions. The concept note should be prepared very carefully to ensure the validity at the full application stage. So we already said that the elements of the concept note can only be modified to the margin in the full application. You should keep the logical framework matrix in mind. even if you're not submitting it now, but you should prepare your concept note in line with what you will propose in more details later on. You should integrate project management, you should integrate communication plan, stakeholder involvement activities in the overall action plan. You should consider timing. You should not take things for granted. Just maybe here to stress that basically it doesn't mean that if you're proposing the project and the amount that you're proposing, especially, that you will certainly at the very end, even if you are invited to sign the grant contract and start implementing, it doesn't mean necessarily that you will receive those funds in the same amount, because in the budget, it is indicative budget. So you are planning your expenditures and you are planning the values of the expenditures, the amount that you're asking, on the basis of the current situation. So on the other hand, when you start implementing, those expenditures will become real expenditures. So you will have invoices, I don't know, you will have salaries, gross salaries, you will have timesheets that prove the work on the project. So you will have many other relevant documentation, such as bank statements, fuel bills. So everything that you will spend during the implementation of your activities, you will have to keep all the relevant files, and you will need to basically prove that these expenditures have been incurred, that they exist, that they have, and that they have been paid. So for example, not only invoice is enough, but the proof of payment is enough, is needed as well, like bank or something. It depends on the way how it was paid. So you will have to prove each expenditure under the project, and on the basis of all this proof and actual costs, because you have maybe envisaged that the laptop will cost 700 euros, and at the end you paid it 650. 650 is actual cost of this laptop, not 700 that you have envisaged in the budget. So take that into account. It's not like I'm proposing it and I will receive this money 100%. No, it will be on the basis of actual cost, and if you will not have any non-eligible costs, because sometimes if you don't prove the cost properly with proper documents, or if you perform the secondary procurement, which is not in line with the procedures, EU procedures, then it can be even declared as non-eligible. So take that into account as well, especially when you are planning your project. So all target groups, final beneficiaries, which are under the scope of your action, should be listed. You should quantify data and provide it for each target group and final beneficiaries. If you're not certain in your affiliated entities, better not to include any affiliated entities. There is a detailed explanation in the guidelines for applicants, what is considered an affiliated entities and what is not considered. You can plan to have some associates on the project, but they are not mentioned now in this concept note stage. You as a lead applicant, if you have partners, you will sign the declaration on behalf of all the applicants. So if you are having co-applicants, which is not obligatory for lottery, you should make sure that they will indeed be ready to take part in the full application stage as well. Okay, you are already well informed and instructed that you have to submit your concept note online by a prospect. You have received also the prospect guidance, which is prepared by a GST project, and you have the possibility to consult our help desk even for the prospect, for the needs that you will have when you will have to upload your concept note in this online database. You will receive an automatic confirmation of the receipt. Don't wait for the very last end, so don't wait for the last day or last hour. Try to prepare it in time in order not to have problems with uploading and not be in position, you know, to participate on the call. Because if you don't submit it timely, it's you know, it's over. It's administratively non-compliant, and such proposals are not taken into consideration. I already mentioned that you have a possibility to ask questions, not only here during our training sessions, because at the very beginning we said that our opinion, which is given to you here, doesn't necessarily mean that it is official opinion of the contracting authority. We are not the contracting authority. We are sharing our experience and knowledge here. But if you want to have certainly official reply from the side of the contracting authority, I would advise you to ask questions on this following email address. And you should do it no later than 21 days before the deadline for submission of concept notes, which is actually today. Yes. So it is today. On the other hand, I said also to you to follow regularly and to check maybe even every day this link where the call for proposal documentation is published. If there will be any changes, even within the call, it should be published there. Also, the answers to the questions, which will most probably be in two sets, will be published there as well. And you may find answers to many of your questions, maybe even to some questions that you haven't even think about that. So certainly it's very, very valuable to review this question and answer document, because as I said, it's official opinion of the contracting authority and becomes a part. These answers provided will become a part of the call, like extension of the guidelines for applicants document. Replies should be given no later than 11 days before the deadline for submission of concept note, which is 8th of April. Since the current deadline for the concept note submission is 19th of April. What is very important to stress here, if you will ask some questions, for example, if I am eligible, is this activity eligible? In order to ensure the equal treatment of applicants, please be aware that the contracting authority cannot give you a prior opinion on the eligibility criteria. So eligibility of lead applicants, co-applicants, eligibility of affiliated entities, or eligibility of an action or specific activities. You need to address, you need to read carefully what is envisaged in the call. There is a set of activities and set of actions that are eligible. It is non-exhaustive list, but anyhow, all other activities need to be similar to the ones that are listed there. And you have also the list of non-eligible activities. And you have very clearly stated for each lot the eligibility criteria for lead applicant, co-applicant, and affiliated entities. So you need to read it carefully, read the footnotes as well, and then to distinguish if you are eligible to apply or if your action or activities are eligible. Okay. No individual replies are given to the questions from the side of the contracting authority. All the questions that were asked will be published together with the answers for everyone, you know, to ensure the equal treatment. We also plan to publish it on our project, GST project web pages. You can have the link here. And all questions which are related to registration in PADOR or online submission via prospect should be addressed to the IT help desk. So this is official IT help desk address from the side of the contracting authority for PADOR and prospect support. But nevertheless, as Nila, my colleague Nila, she already recommended to you that you could contact GST project as well, but this is official IT help desk, so you should also contact them if there is such need. Okay, so this is the first part for today's. We have the concept note assessment, and just to take a look if we have received any questions.
Yes, there were a couple of questions that were received. One of the attendees just wanted to know whether the PADOR guideline that we shared with you today is the same as for lot 2. Yes, it's the same. I answered that already. And there was one question regarding the references. You will see in the concept note that there is a particular question where you can provide the list of studies that sort of like influenced your concept note preparation. But to be honest with you, I prefer when I'm reading any concept notes to see the reference in the text as the text goes along. So you can also use footnotes to provide references. Yeah, I mean, either internet links, I mean, if you're using some internet sources, or the proper references from some scientific sources. That's, I guess, the answer to the question. And then there was a question also, when do you expect the evaluation of the concept notes to be completed and to inform the applicants about the results? In the guide for applicants, you will see that there is a tentative calendar for this call, unless it changes, of course, which is always possible. The expectation is that this concept note assessment process should be finalized by mid-July. And currently, the date that's presented in this tentative calendar for the submission of the full application forms is mid-September. According to procedures, once you are invited to submit full application form, at minimum you need to be given 45 days to submit it. So just for you to know also. Of course, always with these Europaid calls, I don't know why, but it happens very often. We are caught in the summer when, you know, like usually people go on holidays. They are not really dreaming of preparing their full application forms during August or something like that. But also bear in mind that this is only a tentative calendar. According to our experiences, it usually took more time than presented in this tentative calendar. But according to the information that we currently possess, this is mid-July. Okay, I think that we should make a break now, 20-minute break. And then following that, we can discuss a little bit the quiz that you did yesterday, just a couple of questions that are, you know, I think we should clarify them. And and then to continue with any questions or any dilemmas that you may have. So of course we will keep this open, this platform, for the break time as well. So if you have any questions, just let us know. If not, we will be then back in 20 minutes. Okay, I think it's time to go back to the presentation part. I hope you enjoyed your break. I just wanted to briefly go through the answers that we received because we're using these Microsoft Forms. The analysis of results for any survey or any test is done quite quickly. Question number 1, whether the contracting authority can transfer funds from one lot to another, regardless of the tentative amounts, indicative amounts that they've presented in the guideline for applicants. Excellent result. You've all understood that this is possible. Question number 2, does your project need to contribute to specific objectives of the lot that you are applying for? Common sense, yes, of course it should. Very important, because this is how your relevance is going to be assessed. So it's very important that in your concept notes you elaborate how this is actually going to be done, how your project contributes to specific objectives and priorities, and all of you have answered correctly. Question number 3, also minimum and maximum amounts for lot 3. There are certain thresholds, minimum and maximum amounts of grants set for each lot within this call, and usually this is the practice in your paid calls as such, and all of you have answered correctly this question as well. Question number 4 as well, minimum and maximum percentages of total eligible costs. This is something where people sometimes also make mistakes, you know. They request, for example, 100% funding from the European Union, and it is not possible. There needs to be some co-financing as well. So it seems that this is also understood by all who took part in this quiz. Question number 5, what is the maximum initial planned duration of an action under this call? There was one mistake here. So the maximum duration that you can plan is 36 months. 3 years in general for lot 3. So just to clarify that. Can a natural person apply as an applicant on lot 3? We have one wrong answer. The answer is no. A natural person, a physical entity, a human being, or a robot, they cannot apply, you know, to lot 3. Only lot 1. So if you are a natural person, please do not apply to lot 3. Apply for lot 1 if you are interested in applying for this lot. Financial support to third parties. This is also something where we received one wrong answer. According to this guideline for applicants, according to the provisions of this call, if you are planning, it's not an obligation to plan financial support to third parties, or let's call it re-granting, sub-granting. But if you are planning it, the maximum amount that you can allocate in your budget for it is 60,000 euros, and per a third party, 10,000 euros. So let's say that you are planning to sub-grant 2 small grants to two small civil society organizations in your neighborhood. You cannot plan that these grants are going to be 11,000 euros each. They have to go up to 10. They can be less, of course, but they cannot be above 10,000 euros each. And altogether, sub-granting funds that you are planning in your budget cannot go over 60,000 euros. Question number 8, are potential types of actions detailed on page 15 exhaustive? No, they are not. Usually this is the practice in Europe paid funds. It is not a set list, a fixed list of activities and projects that you need to apply. It is a list which only gives you an indication of what kind of projects contracting authority expects to see, but it doesn't fix the list. And if you think of any action that is a little bit different from the wording that you see in this list, it's possible to also send a project that deals with those specific topics. It's only for your inspiration, how to say, so that you see what types of action you could think of. But if your action, if your project, and not to confuse your action and project, these are the synonyms usually in these guidelines for applicants. So one and the same. Only an inspiration. If you think of some action that is perhaps a little bit different from what is provided in this guide, it's still possible to submit such a project. Ineligible actions include certain thresholds that should not be surpassed. For infrastructure, this is 10%. This confused you a little bit because we are seeing few wrong answers here. What does it mean? It means that only 10% of your so-called direct eligible actions, the direct eligible costs, can go to infrastructure, not more than that. So if you are planning a project which includes significant amount of infrastructural work, this is really not the call for you. But if you're planning a project with some infrastructural work, please bear in mind that the amount that you are going to spend on it at the end can only be 10% of direct eligible costs. Direct eligible cost is a very technocratic term, but these are all the costs excluding indirect costs in your budget. You can open the budget template and you will see these expressions, formulas as well, and then it will be clearer to you what the term direct eligible costs are. Now I also see that this confuses you still a little bit, the number of applications per an applicant, how many you can submit per lot totally, can you receive 2 grants, can you be awarded 2 grants, can you also be a partner at the same time as the lead applicant. So please go to guidelines for applicants, and there is this section there which explains that, and just study it. Why is this important? Because a lead applicant can submit 1 project per lot. If you submit more, all these projects that you submitted will be excluded, So take this into account, study the provision in the guidelines to understand this, and then just, select whatever option is there, like don't go against the provisions of the call, because then you're risking exclusion. Co-financing in kind for the volunteers. I also see that this still confuses you a little bit. It's allowed, it's possible to plan co-financing in the form of volunteer work. This is not financial co-financing, how to say, it's human work, which is valorized. And for Cyprus currently, that valorization is 78 euros a day. So if you're planning in your project to have 10 volunteering days and you want that to be a contribution, your contribution to the project, this can be monetarized. It can be recognized as financial contribution. And in this case, it's going to be 780, regardless if you think that these volunteers are worth more or less, because we are not talking of any payments here, but only of valorization of work. You will need in your budgets to plan this rate, this 78 euro rate per day for any volunteer. Logical framework, outputs, outcomes, results, impacts. I see that this confuses you a little bit as well. So just think of the hierarchy of goals, and there is an overall objective, which is nowadays called impact. This is an overall goal that your project contributes to. Outcomes are tangible results of your project that are under your control. This is an effect on your target group, or a production of a certain, service or a publication or knowledge or something like that. So perhaps this is something that you can consider, where you distinguish between this impact and outcome and planning your log frames. Financial responsibility for the implementation of the action. I also see that some of you still need a little bit of clarification here. Of course, as partners, you're collaborating together and you bear the responsibility for a successful implementation of the project, of course, but at the end, you also need to understand that the lead applicant, their bank accounts are going to be used for the payment of the money, and they are collecting all the documents. You are not sending 2 reports to the commission, you are sending 1 report. So the lead applicant has this ultimate responsibility for the implementation of the action. And then question number 15, the variation, 20%, the correct answer is 20%. If you are now asking for a certain amount of money, and then you're invited to submit full application form, that amount of money that you originally requested, it can vary 20% plus and minus in the next stage. Not important at this stage because you will be requesting an amount as it is, but important for the actual implementation of the project, just for you to know that, you know, like if you're invited to submit the full application form, you will need to submit detailed budget, and there is a certain maneuvering space for the increase of funds that you originally requested, but it's not infinitesimal, so to speak, you know, it's limited to 20%. So that's it when it comes to quiz. The results are very good in terms of, you know, like your answers. It seems that you know, like during these presentations yesterday and today, a lot of things were clarified, but there are still certain things that you need to look into. And then again, I would advise you after this training to carefully read the guidelines for applicants, perhaps once more. And if you have any dilemma or anything like that, share these questions with us through our help desk. It is true that today is the last day to submit questions to the contracting authority functional mailbox, but it doesn't mean that you cannot address us as the GST project. We are a service contractor to this contracting authority. So if you are in any need to clarify anything in addition, we remain available. That's it from my side. We can go back to Ivana now to continue with her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra, for this very detailed analysis of the quiz results. I'm also very satisfied. It seems that certain issues have been clarified during this two-day training. But on the other hand, you were also instructed now for those of you who made some mistakes in replies. I hope it is clear now, but we remain at your disposal anyhow for further clarifications, questions, or assistance that you might need. So let's continue with the presentation for today. So we have this second session and the last session, which is related to concept note assessment. And we will start with the description of the assessment process. So your concept notes are assessed by evaluators and assessors. Assessors are basically supporting the evaluators in cases where there are a lot of concept notes submitted, which is what it is expected under this call, because there are 3 lots and there are a lot of interested parties to participate. So the assessors are supporting in their assessment of the concept notes, and their scores are summed up. The average scores are summed up, and the concept notes are then ranked according to the average scores. The proceedings, so all the actions that are done in the evaluation process are strictly confidential. And all parties, meaning the evaluator, the members of the evaluation committee, together with the assessors, that are bound to respect the principle of confidentiality, impartiality, and no conflict of interest. What does it mean? That they need to keep all the information for themselves, very strictly confidential, until the end of the process, until the contract signature or award decision, which follows after the award decision of the side of the contracting authority. So the process is confidential, also, of course, the names of the assessors and the evaluators, their impartiality in their assessment, in performance of their assessments need to be ensured, they need to be impartial, and they cannot be in the conflict of interest with any of the actors, any of the applicants, co-applicants, affiliated entities, and so on. So if they are in conflict of interest, they need to declare it immediately and step out from this process. So all these principles need to be ensured. Lead applicants whose applications have not been or provisionally selected will be informed about the scores which are obtained in the evaluation, including breakdown by section and subsection of the evaluation grid. You will see later on the questions in the evaluation grid. So only the ones who has not been invited on the second step full application, for submission of full application, only they will be informed about the scores. And they can even be given the comments and justification provided by the evaluation committee about the given scores. All the others which will be selected for the second stage, they will not be informed about the scores. They will just be invited to submit full application. So in order to be selected, to have the opportunity to be selected for the second stage, you need to receive a score of at least 30 points in the evaluation. So maximum total score for the concept note is 50. Maximum points is 50, 25 points per each section. So 25 points for the description of the action and 25 points for the relevance of the action. You will see later on the distribution of these points to subsections. Okay, you should bear in mind what is very important, that your score that you receive under the relevance of the action section is transferred to the full application evaluation. This section of the concept note is then very important, but on the other hand, also description of the action is very important because you need to gain at least 30 points to be even considered for the second step, but it doesn't necessarily mean that if you have 30 points, which is minimum, that you will be invited on the second step, because it really depends on the other applications and the scores and the ranking list. So if there are many more concept nodes that gained higher scores than yours, if you have only 30 points or a bit about 20 points, then maybe even you will not be invited. It's not like all that satisfies this minimum threshold will be invited for the second stage. That what I wanted to clarify. You have the assessment grid, so you can self-score yourself, or basically it would be better to ask your colleagues or your friends or maybe some family members to provide you the critical remarks on the basis of these questions that are available in the assessment grid. So in the guidelines for applicants, you are informed about the questions that will be asked by the assessors and the evaluators while they are reviewing your concept note. So you should be aware of that, and everything is in that sense transparent to everyone. So use this grid not to assess your proposal that you will give the final scores to yourself, but you can self-score yourself for the purpose of some critical remarks that you can give to yourself, or that can be given by your colleagues or family members that could read your concept note, because it can give you an overview of the points and the scores that you might get in this process. Okay, so this is the first part of the assessment grid for the relevance of the action. So there are 4 sections. It is basically the questions that we already passed through. So the first one and the most important one is because it is multiplied by 2, if you can see below the table. So the first question is multiplied by 2 because of its importance. And that is the relevance of your action, of your proposal, to the objectives and priorities of the call. If you need to show if the expected results of the action are aligned with the priorities defined in the guidelines for applicants. So here the maximum subscore is 10. For other 3 questions, other 3 subsections of the relevance of the actions, the maximum subscore is 5. So the second one is the relevance of your proposal to the particular needs and constraints of the target countries, region, or relevant sectors, including the synergy with other development initiatives and avoidance of duplication that we already stressed earlier. Then the subsection is how clearly defined and strategically chosen are those involved, meaning final beneficiaries and target groups. If you have addressed their needs and constraints, if you have clearly defined them, and if you address them appropriately. So also maximum subscore for this subsection is 5. And the added value elements are also evaluated under relevance of the action. So it's question number 1.4. If your proposal contains particular added value elements which are indicated in the guidelines for applicants. So you may find under point 1.2 the list of the added value elements. We also had it in our presentation. It slightly differs for the lot 1 and for the lot 2 and 3. So just take a closer look. And here you can be scored up to 5 points. So in total, you can see that for the relevance of the action, you can receive 25 points. And these points are automatically transferred to the second step if you will be invited for the full application submission. This score will be not evaluated again in the full application, but it will be automatically transferred because basically the relevance of your action to the priorities and objectives of the call remains the same even in the second stage. Okay, second part of the assessment grid is related to your design of your action. And again, we have this maximum score of 25. So in total with the relevance of the action is 50 points, maximum 50 points for the concept note, 25 points each section. And here we don't have a multiplying of subscore, but we have not 4, but 5 criteria, 5 questions that are asked from the evaluators and assessors. They basically need to fulfill and justify the scoring and reply to all these questions here, exactly like they are here presented now and presented in the guidelines for applicants. So the first question is, how coherent is the overall design of your action? Does your proposal indicate the expected results to be achieved by the action? And does the intervention logic, so intervention logic from the logical framework, explain the rationale to achieve the expected results? You will not present the logical framework now, but you need to present the intervention logic. But in order to do so properly, basically, it would be best to already have developed logical framework, even though you are not submitting it. Then the second question is, does the design reflect a robust analysis of the problems involved and the capacities of the relevant stakeholders? For each of these sections, subsections, the maximum score is 5. So maybe you can gain for the first question subscore 4. Then for the second question, you can receive maybe 5. Then maybe you can receive even score 3 or 2 or 2.5, you know, so it really depends on the quality of your proposal concerning each of these questions. So you need to take all of them into account. As the third question is, does the design take into account external factors, which are risks and these assumptions? So we already explained what is considered as risk and assumptions for the successful implementation of your project. Then next question is, are the activities feasible and consistent in relation to the expected results, including the time frame? So you should briefly outline your time frame, and if the results, or meaning output, outcomes, and impact, are realistic. If you have been realistic in your proposal. And then the last question is, to which extent does the proposal integrate relevant cross-cutting elements? We already explained to you which are the cross-cutting elements in the previous slide. So I will not read them again. And you can receive here up to 5 points as well. These are some important concepts. Basically, we tackled all of these, but just to have it on one page. So you need to be relevant for this call. You need to be closely linked to the objectives which needs to be reached. You need to be credible. You should try to use simple as possible language. You should be accessible and understandable to non-experts. You should be ambiguous and easy to interpret. You need to be consistent. You need to provide the similarity in your planning and presentation throughout the entire proposal. You need to be consistent and coherent. You need to ensure internal and external coherence. So internal coherence will be to look at how the various internal components of the intervention operate together to achieve the objectives, and external coherence, looking at how intervention within the same area and or policy could work together. So take into account internally and externally your action and influence, intervention and influence on the policy level. Okay, what are assessors looking for when assessing the relevance, the relevance of your action? So these are some additional questions to the ones that we already have and that are available in the assessment grid, but this is like additional support to you. Some questions that you can also ask yourself when you are preparing this part, relevance of the action. So the questions are, do the objectives and priorities which are outlined in the application follow the objectives and priorities which are laid down in the guidelines for each lot? I already said to you that you should not copy paste if you're applying to more than one lot. So you have to address and refer to the priorities which are defined for each of these 3 lots. You should address if there are specific references to relevant sections in the guidelines. So you can refer to the sections of the guidelines and clearly explain how your action address these priorities and objectives. So the second question with regards to relevance would be, does the application address the needs and constraints of the applicants, target groups, and final beneficiaries? How well are the needs or constraints identified or defined and addressed? Is the information provided on local conditions comprehensive and concrete? Is data presented to convince on the necessity of the proposed intervention? Is link or duplication with other interventions stipulated and explained? How well are those involved defined and proposed to be addressed? Are the target groups clear and quantified, if possible, and seem comprehensive and strategic to the action? And the appropriateness of the proposed intervention strategy, meaning the intervention logic that you have proposed with regards to activities and achievement of outputs and other results. When assessors are addressing and assessing design, what are they looking for? So here are some additional questions that you may ask yourself when you're preparing the design of your action. Are the problems to be addressed clearly outlined? Does the proposed intervention strategy reflect the problems which are identified in the situation analysis? Is additional information needed on activities planned? Are any external factors considered or analyzed? Are stakeholders mentioned and analyzed? Are the activities feasible, and do the proposed activities make sense? Are the activities sufficient to reach the planned objectives and results? If not, are there any complementary measures described? Concreteness or the level of detail of the planned activities and connectivity between components, feasibility of the proposed project duration, is it in line with the proposed action plan? Is internal logic of the proposed intervention strategy in terms of formulating connected, concrete, and time-bound activities achievable and measurable results and project-specific objectives? And are the results clear, measurable, and realistic? So these are some additional questions that you might ask yourself in addition to the ones that we already presented and which are available in the Guidelines for Applicants assessment grid. Okay, so with regards to notification of the results for the concept note phase, I already explained that it doesn't necessarily mean if you will be scored with minimum 30 points out of 50 for the concept note that you will be automatically invited on the second stage. There are some other rules how the number of concept notes is reduced in case there are many concept note received of good quality. So on the basis of the score, there is a ranking list, and the amount for the requested EU contribution are also listed there. And for example, for lot 3, the allocated amount out of 2.5 million available under this call, the allocated amount is 1 million euros. And then in the first, this concept note phase, the contracting authority is inviting those which are first on the ranking list in line with their scoring for the concept note, and they are cumulatively calculating the EU contributions that are asked for all these applications. And then they go, the requested contributions, they calculate to be superior or equal to 200% and inferior or equal to 220% of the available budget for each lot. So for example, for this lot 3, available budget allocation is 1 million, and they will invite all the applications in line with the rank list up to 2 million euros, for example. Because, you know, in case some applicants decide not to submit the full application, or if they submit the full application which is not of good quality, or if they don't satisfy the administrative requirements for the full application, which is also sometimes the case. So the contracting authority wants to ensure that they will have enough good quality proposals in the full application. That's why they are asking for the double amount that it is available, in order, you know, to make sure that all this amount allocation will be disbursed and contracted. So the lead applicant will receive a letter indicating the reference number of their application. And this letter will automatically appear online in the prospect profile. And you will be informed, and the pre-selected lead applicants will subsequently be invited to submit full application, which are identified by the contracting authority. How does the whole application process look? So once your concept note is submitted, it is checked for administrative purposes. If you have submitted incorrect language, if you have submitted it on time, and things like that. If there is a need for some clarifications, you may be requested by the side of the contracting authority to provide such clarifications under this step 1 administrative check. Then, if you pass this administrative check of the concept note, your concept note goes to the evaluation against the criteria which is set in the guidelines in line with the assessment grid that we have just presented. It is still step 1. If you pass this phase, you will be asked to submit the full application, which is then evaluated and considered under step 2. Again, we have this administrative check of the full application, and subsequently, if you pass this administrative check, your full application will be evaluated. If you pass this step 2, so full application evaluation, then there is a step 3 where the eligibility check is done. So you will be invited to provide all the supporting documents that are necessary to prove the eligibility of your proposal. And then if you pass this step 3, then you are invited and pre-selected for contracting. And some maybe you can be asked by the contracting authority for some budget revisions or further clarifications, but anyhow, only if you pass all these 3 steps, you will be invited to sign the grant contract. And then, when I also mentioned earlier, then the real work starts. It's quite a long process. It usually lasts 1 year, maybe sometimes in some cases even more. So in line with the indicative timetable that is available in the guidelines for applicants, at the very end there is a table, and you can see that the envisaged time frame for the start of implementation of your future grant contracts, if you will pass all these 3 steps, will be in April next year. It can be a bit earlier, but it is usually a bit later than planned. But it is only indicative date, so we are not sure at this stage when it will actually take place. but it is quite a long process. What follows is if you pass the concept note phase, so just in more details, you will be invited to submit the full application. The template, which is available on in the documentation of the call, is Annex A2. As I already mentioned, after you submit the full application, first there is an administrative check similar to the one in step 1. And then the full application that passed the administrative check are evaluated based on 2 criteria: selection criteria and award criteria. Selection criteria, your financial and operational capacity is examined. So you either pass this selection criteria or not, and then if you pass it, you will be assessed, your full application will be assessed on the basis of award criteria. So you need to have stable sources of funding to ensure that you will be able to finance the action until the very end, as I explained yesterday, because you will receive the final payment only after your action finish, after you pay all the invoices, all the expenditures, and then the final payment of the balance will follow after submission of your final report with all the supporting documents that are needed, and after the review and assessment of your report by the side of the contracting authority. Sometimes it can be even not only a couple of months, but even a half year after your implementation of your action ends. So you need to have these financial capacities. You need to prove it, that you will be able to sustain the project until the very end, and that you have operational capacity, that you have management in-house capacities to handle this project properly. So first is this selection criteria, and then if you pass this selection criteria, then you will be evaluated on the basis of the award criteria. What does it mean? It is assessment of the quality of the applications in relation to the objectives and priorities which are stipulated in the guidelines, and they include relevance of the action, which is basically the score that is taken from the concept note, as I already explained. Then the design of your action will be evaluated on the basis of the full application, effectiveness and feasibility of your action, the sustainability of your action after the project ends, and in relation to the budget and cost effectiveness. So there are different categories for this award criteria that are evaluated, and this grid, assessment grid, is also available in the guidelines for applicant on pages 35 and 36, so you can consult it, even though it's envisaged in the step 2, in the second phase, but you can take a closer look to see what will be expected from you. What follows if you pass the full application phase? So after the evaluation of the full application, the table is again prepared. So ranking a list of the applications according to their score. And the highest scoring applications will be provisionally selected until the available budget for each lot. So in this second step, it is not anymore the case that contracting authority invites as many as applicants up to the twice available budget for each lot, but only until the available budget for each lot. And some reserve list is also prepared in case of, not passing the eligibility check in the step 3, or in case something goes wrong, then the reserve list is prepared of the applications that could, jump in if something goes wrong with the initial list of applications in line with the scores up to the available budget for the lot. Okay, so this is basically some very brief information, but you can see more information in the guidelines for applicants. As I already mentioned, the eligibility verification is performed on the basis of supporting documents only for the applications that have been provisionally selected according to their score within the available budget for the call and for each lot, to be more precise. Any rejected applicant in step 3, eligibility verification, is replaced by the next best placed application on the reserve list. At the end, certainly the eligible applicants are informed from the side of the contracting authority, and then this grant contract is prepared for the signature. What after grant award? If you are awarded the grant contract, the lead applicant will become the beneficiary, which is called coordinator. You can see this term in the special conditions of Annex G, zip file, before the zip file of your future grant contract. So these are special conditions. And the contracts are signed in the name of the partnership, if you have partners, by the lead applicant, who becomes project coordinator. The coordinator is the only interlocutor, the one who is communicating with the contracting authority officially. And he is representing and acting on behalf of any co-beneficiaries, if you have partners or affiliated entities. So the lead applicant becomes the coordinator of the design and implementation of the action. And he also bears the financial responsibility for the implementation of the project. I already stressed it a couple of times, but at the very end to stress once more. So the grant contract that you might be in the position to sign after you pass all these 3 steps is a legally binding document. It's contractual obligation. You are entering in contractual relation with the contracting authority. You will have certain rights, you will have certain obligations, and you should observe this contract and these annexes as your potential future formal obligation. You will take over the set of formal contractual obligations that need to be followed throughout the implementation period. The beneficiaries will have to implement the action in accordance with your description of the action. So in the full application, there is a part dedicated to the description of the action, and later on, if you will be selected to sign the grant contract, this description of the action will become Annex 1 of your grant contract. And the grant beneficiaries or the coordinator will be responsible for implementing the action and will retain the ownership of the results of the action. Okay, we came to the very end. If you are willing, you are invited to not only to ask questions, but also to show your readiness, or maybe you're not fully ready to finalize your concept note, but at least to start preparing it. And for the ones who already started, I hope some issues have become more clear by participating on this training. So if you're willing to express the emoticon, just to give us some feedback after this training, you are invited to do so in this chat option. Of course, you're invited to ask more questions, but just to go through some information details until the end of this presentation. we will certainly reply to any of the questions, but just to stress that this help desk support for potential applicants is functional under this GST project in order to provide you the support in quality development of the project proposals as per needs, including individual and group consultations, depending on the needs. These help desk activities may take form of one-on-one consultations, group learning sessions, email consultations, or similar, depending on the preferences. We can certainly not draft the concept notes instead of you, but with our advice, we could certainly support you and by replying on the questions that you might have. Okay. The help desk is taking place in English, but if there is a need, there is a possibility to have even the translation organized by the project. We would advise you to seek for the help desk support as soon as possible, but this training took place a bit later than for lot 1 and lot 2. So this date could be slightly postponed for sure for the particularities of this lot. And anyhow, whenever you will feel that you need support, try to ask help. If there will be resources and time to support you, we will surely try to support all of you, not depending so much on this date. So after you contact us, you will be informed on the available time slot. It can be in person, it can be organized online. So just contact us and we will see what can we do. Also, I want to inform you about the possible civic space support. Maybe some of you are already aware of this project. They have developed some mainstreaming guidelines on cross-cutting issues that could be relevant for you. You can take a look at their webpage, which is available here on this slide. And you can also contact them through email for any possible support that you can ask from their side. They will also be holding advocacy workshops for potential applicants which are interested in developing or improving our advocacy strategies. So these are the tentative dates. But anyhow, if you're interested to participate on these workshops, contact them or consult their web pages regularly to see if there have been any changes with regards to the timing and the date. What to say at the very end? Good luck to all of you. Thank you very much for participating yesterday and today. And now we will see to reply on the questions that you have asked during this session.
Yes, we can keep this open, of course, for some additional minutes. I mean, if anyone has any additional questions, so far we've only received one. It relates to the bank, specific bank account for funding. I mean, formally speaking, reading your general conditions, you don't really need to open a separate bank account, but this is always recommended because then it's easy to trace expenditure. So, but I mean, formally and legally speaking, looking at the contract, you can also use your normal bank account and just have, you know, accounts organized so that it's traceable. The expenditure from the project, it's traceable. The same applies to any co-applicants as well. I mean, they can open their own bank accounts, new for the project. For Turkish Cypriot community, just to clarify that this is typically Euro bank account. For the Republic, this is not important. But yeah, I mean, just not to confuse you. I mean, when you are registering in this PADOR, you need to provide your financial details and your bank account. And before the signature, you will be providing something which is called financial identification form. And in this financial identification form, you're supposed to indicate your bank account, but this can be changed before the actual signature of the contract. So for example, if you've now presented one bank account in your PADOR profile, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to use that one and the same bank account for the project. You can change it in the procedure, yes. But I mean, always advisable to have separate bank accounts, as I said, because of the traceability of the expenditure. But looking formally at your contracts, this is not really a requirement. So you can also have like a sub account in your general account where you are going to be spending money from this project, as long as it is traceable and as long as on bank statements it's possible to see what expenditure you've done for this particular project. Any additional questions?
It seems everything was clear enough.
Thanks. If no additional questions, then we can slowly close this training. Thank you very much for participating. Also to our dear translator who's been working with us all these days. Thank you very much. Yes, I mean, Ivan has already mentioned, but let me emphasize again. We remain available to assist you in preparation of your concept notes. If you need to consult regarding any additional points, if you want to, you know, like when you prepare your project, you want to go through a certain set of project specific questions, that's possible. Just please let us know using this help desk email so that we can organize our time accordingly. The same applies to PADOR registration. If you need any support in that sense, or if you have any additional questions, send them to us and then we will try our best to provide you support and to answer them. Thank you very much. Good luck with concept note preparation. At the end of the day, I know that this is a lot of information. Yes, of course, but it's not rocket science. What you need to do now is to sit down with your co-applicants, or if you are applying alone, with your project team and plan these concept notes. It's a 5-pager. Needs to be convincing, so that because we do expect some competition, and then just try to be convincing and plan projects that are strategic also for your own missions within the organizations, and then hopefully we will see each other in a couple of months when the full application forms are going to be a topic of the training. Thank you and good luck. Have a good afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you for this conclusion, Alexandra. It's yeah, it is a couple of months, but most probably somewhere, yes, in the summer or a bit later on, hopefully. Okay, thank you all once again for participation. We remain available. I have copied once more the email where you can contact us for further support and further questions. Thank you. Good luck. Bye-bye.